The night my husband died, Savannah was too quiet. Even the cicadas outside my window seemed to hold their breath, as if the whole world was waiting for me to break. But I didn't. I sat in that wooden chair he built 30 years ago and stared at the empty spot where his shoes used to rest. I didn't cry. I just whispered, "It's just you and me now, Margaret." And in the hollow silence that followed, I realized there was no you anymore, only me. When the sun rose over the Spanish moss hanging from the oaks, I promised myself I'd stay strong. Earl would have wanted that. He left me a small pension, a paid-off house, and a heart that didn't know what to do with its own quiet. People say time heals, but they forget to mention that the first months after a loss are just noise, phone calls, casseroles, condolences, and then, suddenly, silence. That silence was the loudest thing in my life, until Ethan came by, my only son, my pride, my reason for still getting up in the morning. He knocked softly, as if testing whether his presence would break me. Behind him was Vanessa, my daughter-in-law, beautiful and polished like a woman who'd never known the smell of bleach or hospital disinfectant. And between them stood Alyssa, my granddaughter turning 16 that week. "Mom," Ethan began, voice low, practiced, "we wanted to check on you." The words, "check on you," landed warm on my chest. For the first time in weeks, someone needed me again. I smiled, told them I was fine, even though the loneliness clung to the air like humidity in July. We had coffee. Vanessa commented on how lovely the house was, how charming in an old-fashioned way. Alyssa scrolled through her phone, nodding occasionally. Then Ethan reached for my hand. The gesture was tender, rehearsed. "Mom, I need to ask you something," he said softly. "Vanessa and I want to throw a sweet 16 party for Alyssa. Something special. She's been through a rough year, but, with the economy, it's tight." I could feel the hesitation in his fingers the same way he used to hold my hand when he wanted something as a boy. "How much are we talking?" I asked. 10,000, he said quickly, like pulling off a Band-Aid. Vanessa's perfect smile flickered. "It's just a loan, Margaret. We'll pay you back soon. You know how much this means to Alyssa." 10,000. The number spun in my head like a coin falling down a well. I looked at Alyssa, my sweet granddaughter, still half child, half woman, and thought of all the birthdays I'd missed while working double shifts at the hospital. Maybe this was my chance to make up for lost time. Maybe this was how families stayed close by helping. "Of course," I said, "that's what family's for." Ethan squeezed my hand, relief flooding his face. "You're the best, Mom." The next evening, I transferred the money, and a week later, I sat at a round table in an upscale coastal venue watching lights shimmer over the dance floor. Alyssa danced in a designer dress that sparkled under the chandelier. Vanessa floated through the room like a movie star. Ethan laughed with the guests, a drink in his hand, proud and carefree. I stayed in the corner, smiling politely, clapping when they cut the cake, pretending not to notice that no one had saved me a seat at the family table. Later that night, when I checked my phone, I saw Vanessa's post on Instagram, "Alyssa's dream night, thank you to our wonderful family." There were dozens of comments, heart emojis, praise for the decorations, for Vanessa's impeccable taste. But nowhere in the captions, nowhere in the tags, was my name. I told myself it didn't matter. Love isn't about recognition, it's about sacrifice, and I was good at that. Days turned into weeks, no one mentioned repayment, no one mentioned the party at all. Until one Sunday, Ethan called again. His tone was rushed, casual. "Mom, the pipes in the kitchen burst. We need to remodel before it gets worse. Just a short-term loan, 8,000 should cover it." I hesitated, but guilt spoke faster than reason. "All right," I said, "I'll transfer it tomorrow." That became the rhythm of our relationship emergencies, disguised as love. "Mom, the car broke down. Mom, tuition's due. Mom, the roof's leaking." And every time, I opened my wallet and my heart. Dottie, my neighbor, noticed the pattern before I did. She was a straight-talking widow with sharp eyes and a sharper sense of justice. One afternoon, she leaned over the fence and said, "Margaret, honey, you're not a mom anymore, you're a bank, and banks charge interest." I laughed it off, but that night, her words replayed in my mind. I told myself she didn't understand. She didn't have children. She didn't know what it felt like to need to be needed. Still, something uneasy began to stir inside me like a tiny crack forming in glass. Weeks later, Ethan and Vanessa visited again, bringing Alyssa and Jaden. I cooked pot roast, set the good plates, even lit candles. For 2 hours, the house was full of laughter, and for a brief moment, I believed we were a real family again. Until, right before leaving, Ethan cleared his throat. "Mom, about the joint account," he said carefully. "It might be easier if we had direct access for emergencies, just to save you the hassle." My smile faltered, but I didn't want to seem distrustful. "If it makes things easier," I said. He kissed my forehead. "You'll see, Mom, this is just practical." When they left, I sat alone at the table, staring at the flickering candle. My dinner had gone cold, untouched. Outside, the wind rustled the magnolia leaves, whispering something I couldn't quite make out. I blew out the candle, and the smoke curled upward like a question I wasn't ready to answer. The first time I saw my balance drop below 5 figures, I told myself it was temporary. Just a small dip. Families help each other, that's what I'd always believed. But 3 years have a way of stretching belief until it starts to choke you. It began quietly, little withdrawals here and there. $800 for a repair, $1,200 for a tuition deposit, $500 for car insurance mix-ups. Ethan always sounded apologetic, reasonable, the voice of a son who'd never stopped needing his mother. I wanted that feeling more than I wanted the money. He'd call me Mama when he needed something big, the same way he used to when he scraped his knees at 5. And every time, I'd feel that ache, the one that whispers, "He still needs you, you're still useful." So, I didn't question it. I signed forms, opened a joint checking account so we could manage things together. I handed over online access because he said, "It's easier, Mom, I'll handle the bills for you." And then the quiet bleeding began. My mornings still looked normal, tea steeping in the same chipped mug, the radio humming old gospel songs, but my peace was being drafted, one withdrawal at a time. When Dottie noticed, she tried to be gentle. "How's your savings holding up, sugar?" she asked one day as we trimmed her rose bushes. "Oh, fine," I lied, clipping the thorns a little too sharply. She raised a brow. "I see that look. You're covering for somebody. Don't you let that boy guilt you out of your golden years." I wanted to defend him, but words stuck in my throat. Dottie didn't have kids. She didn't understand the quiet fear that creeps in when your only child stops calling unless he needs something. Still, her words lingered. Later that week, I sat down with my checkbook and a glass of wine, something I hadn't done since Earl died, and started adding up the temporary loans. The total stared back like a confession. $47,600. I remember whispering, "That can't be right," and recalculating 3 times, but it was. The numbers didn't lie. The next morning, I asked Ethan over for lunch. I made his favorite fried chicken, mashed potatoes, and green beans cooked in bacon grease the way he liked as a boy. I wanted to talk calmly, like adults, like family. When he arrived, Vanessa came too, her perfume filling every inch of my kitchen. I took a breath. "Ethan, honey, I've been looking at the bank account. I noticed quite a few withdrawals that I don't remember approving." He frowned, as if the question itself offended him. "Mom, I told you about those. The HVAC, remember? And the taxes?" "Not all of them," I said quietly, "and the HVAC was last year." Vanessa set her coffee down, her tone syrupy sweet. "Margaret dear, sometimes online transactions can look confusing. You know, all those digital statements, it's easy to misread them." I forced a polite smile, but something cold slid through me. The kind of cold you feel when you realize warmth has been borrowed, not given. Ethan leaned back. "Mom, if you're worried, I'll handle it. I'll make sure it's sorted, but you don't need to stress over numbers. Just enjoy yourself, okay?" He changed the subject to football. By the time they left, my kitchen smelled like fried chicken and denial. Weeks passed. Then months. Each call started the same. "Hey Mom, you busy?" Each one ended with a transfer. When the water heater at their house supposedly burst, I didn't even hesitate. "Just send me the estimate," I said. When Vanessa's business credit card got hacked, I wired $2,000. And when Ethan told me he was investing in a new contracting opportunity, I withdrew $10,000 just to help him get started. That one hurt, but I convinced myself it was different, an investment in his future. Dottie caught me at the grocery store, pulling coupons out of her wallet. "Honey, are you still helping those two?" I hesitated. "Just until they get on their feet." She crossed her arms. "And what about you, Margaret? Who's gonna help you when your feet give out?" I laughed it off, but later that night I couldn't sleep. Her words echoed in the stillness. I opened my laptop again, heart pounding. The total now, $54,200. I shut it quickly, as if closing the lid could bury the truth. Then came the SUV. It was late summer when I dropped by Ethan's house unannounced, carrying homemade peach cobbler. The moment I turned into the driveway, I froze. A sleek black SUV sat parked in front, fresh from the dealership, paper tags still fluttering on the back. Vanessa stepped out the front door, phone pressed to her ear, her laughter sharp as glass. When she saw me, her smile faltered. "Margaret? What a surprise." "Nice car," I said. "Oh, this?" She chuckled nervously. "It's a friend's. We're just borrowing it for a few weeks." I nodded slowly, pretending to believe her. "That's nice. Must be some friend." Ethan came out then, holding a beer. His face tightened when he saw me. "Mom, you should have called. We were about to head out. Just wanted to drop this off." I held up the cobbler. "Thanks," he said, taking it, already halfway turned back inside. The door closed before I reached the sidewalk. I sat in my car for a long time afterward, staring at the reflection of that new SUV in my windshield. The cobbler dish was probably still warm in his hands. My heart wasn't. After that, I stopped visiting. I waited for him to come to me, but weeks went by. Silence. The mailbox filled with statements I didn't open. I knew what they'd say. I started keeping a notebook, a quiet record of every transaction, every lie I pretended not to hear. The entries read like a diary of small betrayals. Sometimes, I'd read them aloud in the evenings. February 14, Ethan said tuition was overdue, $2,500. March 3, Vanessa's dental work, $1,1. May 22, kitchen remodel deposit, $8. It became a rhythm, a ritual of regret. Then one afternoon, the bank called. "Mrs. Lewis, this is Janet from Southern First. We noticed a few large withdrawals from your joint account, just checking if they were authorized." My stomach dropped. "How large?" "2 just this week. $3,500 each." I gripped the phone tighter. "They weren't mine." Janet hesitated. "Would you like us to freeze the account, ma'am?" I wanted to say yes. I wanted to scream yes, but my voice failed. "No, that won't be necessary," I whispered. "It's family." After hanging up, I stared at the wall for a long time. The air felt heavy, like the moment before a thunderstorm. That night, Dottie came over with pie and 2 glasses of bourbon. "What happened?" she asked. I told her everything. For the first time, I didn't downplay it. When I finished, she leaned forward. "Margaret, listen to me. You are not helping them. You are enabling them." Her words cut deep because they were true. But guilt fought back harder. "He's my son, Dot." She shook her head. "And you're his mother, not his safety net. You've paid his bills, but now you're paying with your peace." I couldn't argue. I just sat there, staring at the amber bourbon swirling in my glass. Days later, I received a new email notification. Account low balance alert. Low balance. I had never seen those words in my life. I opened the account and there it was, $2,312.17. Everything else was gone. I remember standing up, dizzy, my pulse in my ears. For a second, I thought I'd faint. Then anger, real anger, crawled up my throat like a flame. I called Ethan, straight to voicemail. Called again. Nothing. Finally, he picked up on the 3rd try. "Mom, I'm in a meeting. Can this wait?" "Ethan," I said slowly, my voice shaking. "Did you withdraw the money?" "What money?" he said. "From our account. It's almost empty." He sighed. "Mom, calm down. It's just cash flow. I'll replace it soon." "Cash flow?" I repeated, the words sour in my mouth. "Mom, don't make this a big deal. You're safe. You've got your pension, right?" He said it like it was nothing, like my savings, my security, my independence meant nothing. I hung up without saying goodbye. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, the same one where I'd once hosted family dinners, and stared at my reflection in the window. The woman looking back wasn't naive anymore. She was tired, older than her years, but something else glimmered behind the exhaustion: awareness. I started writing a new line in my notebook. June 9, realized I'm not losing money, I'm losing myself. A week later, Vanessa showed up at my door. No Ethan, just her. She wore oversized sunglasses and carried a designer handbag. "Margaret." "I wanted to talk," she said, stepping inside before I could answer. Her tone was rehearsed, calm but firm. "Ethan's been under pressure. Business is slow. The kid's tuition, he's doing his best." I crossed my arms. "So his best includes draining my account?" She flinched. "You make it sound worse than it is. You'll get it back. We just need time." "Time," I said, "or obedience?" For the first time, I saw a flicker of something real behind her perfect face, not guilt, but irritation. "You don't have to make this dramatic," she said. "We're family." "That's what makes it dramatic," I replied. She left without saying goodbye. That night, I did something I'd never done before. I poured every number from my notebook into a spreadsheet. The total made my chest tighten. 6万2千美元. That was my silence, measured in dollars. 2 days later, I ran into Jaden at the grocery store. He looked older than I remembered, taller, a little weary. "Grandma," he said, hugging me. "It's been a while." We talked in the cereal aisle, small talk at first. Then, quietly, he said, "Mom and Dad are arguing about money again. Dad's been stressed. I think something's wrong." I touched his shoulder. "You take care of yourself, sweetheart." As he walked away, I thought about how cycles repeat, how children learn love by watching how it's given and taken. I decided right then that something had to break. That evening, while the sun bled gold over the magnolia trees, I sat with Dottie on her porch. She listened as I read the total aloud. She whistled low. "Honey, that's not love. That's a mortgage with lipstick." We laughed, but it was hollow. Then she leaned in. "Margaret, you've got 2 choices. Keep paying for love that doesn't exist, or make them earn the kind they've forgotten." I didn't answer. I didn't have to. The decision had already started forming inside me like a storm cloud. The first thing I noticed in Vanessa's Instagram photo wasn't the ocean. It was the glass. Champagne flutes raised high under a Caribbean sunset. Reflected in one of them, just faintly, was my son's grin. He was laughing, and I wasn't there. For a long moment, I just stared at the screen. My brain tried to rewrite what my eyes saw. Maybe it was an old picture, maybe someone else posted it. But the caption left no room for denial. "Unforgettable family vacation, blessed beyond words." Unforgettable, that word again. I could almost hear Vanessa's honeyed voice saying it, dragging out the syllables like silk. Unforgettable, the same word she'd used at Alyssa's birthday years ago. The same word she'd used when I handed over $10,000 for a dream that didn't include me. My tea went cold in my hands. Outside, the cicadas screamed into the humid Georgia night. Somewhere between the noise and the silence, a crack formed, small but final. The next morning, Dottie found me sitting on my porch with my laptop open, staring at the photo again. "Don't tell me," she said, handing me a cup of coffee, "they went on that trip without you." I didn't answer. I didn't have to. She sighed. "Girl, I warned you. You don't buy love. You rent it, and they just stopped paying." I wanted to be angry, but instead I felt hollow. "I thought family meant togetherness," I whispered. "It does," Dottie said, "but it's supposed to go both ways." She left after a while, promising to check in later. I closed the laptop and told myself I wouldn't open it again. But lies have gravity. By sunset, I'd looked at that photo another 5 times. 3 days passed, not a word from Ethan, not a text. No, Mom, wish you were here. Just silence and more photos. Vanessa on the deck in a red sundress, wind blowing through her perfect hair. Jaden and Alyssa smiling beside their grandparents, her parents, Chuck and Eleanor Holt. Every picture screamed the same truth. I'd been replaced. For years, I had convinced myself I was still part of their family, still needed. But now, the truth shimmered like the sea in those photos, beautiful, distant, and cold. The money wasn't about emergencies. It was about convenience. And I had become the emergency they didn't want to deal with anymore. That evening, I turned on the TV just to drown out my thoughts. The sound filled the house but did nothing for the silence inside me. Every corner of that house, the one I'd shared with Earl, the one Ethan grew up in, seemed to echo their laughter from the cruise ship. When I went to bed, sleep refused to come. My mind replayed every conversation, every transfer, every thank you, Mom. How easily love can sound like theft when you play it back slow. Sometime around 2 a.m., I got up and walked to the living room. On the mantel sat our family photo, the last one before Earl died. Ethan was 35 then, standing tall beside me, Vanessa on his arm, both of them glowing with promise. I picked up the frame. Dust clung to my fingers. The glass was cold. It hit me all the times I'd said yes when I meant no, all the times I'd swallowed my pride for the sake of peace. Peace, I realized, was just the word polite people use for silence. The next day, I got a text from Ethan. Just 6 words. Mom, we had to cancel trip. No apology, no explanation, just that. I laughed, a short, bitter sound that startled even me. Cancelled? I thought. Cancelled looked a lot like cocktails and sunshine. I typed back. Oh, I understand. Then I added a period. A single, small period. It was the only weapon I had. He replied, "We'll make it up to you soon." I didn't answer. Days turned into a week. When they finally came back, the phone rang again. Ethan's voice was upbeat, casual. "Hey Mom, we're back. You doing okay?" "I saw the photos," I said flatly. Silence. "Oh," he muttered, "you follow Vanessa?" "I don't have to," I said. They showed up on my feed. Everyone else seemed to know I was part of that family. Funny, I'm the only one who didn't get the invitation. "Mom, please don't make this awkward." "Awkward," I repeated. "That's an interesting word for betrayal." "Betrayal? Come on, it wasn't like that." His voice hardened. "We needed this break. You know how stressful things have been." I wanted to scream, but my throat wouldn't open. Instead, I said quietly, "I'm glad you got your rest, Ethan." He sighed. "Look, Mom, let's not fight. I'll come by later this week, okay?" When he hung up, I sat there, staring at the silent phone, wondering when exactly my son had become a stranger. 2 days later, they showed up. I opened the door to find Vanessa holding a gift bag, smile bright as a TV host. "We brought you something from the cruise." I took it, a small seashell pendant. Cheap, mass-produced, the kind of thing bought last minute in an airport shop. "It's beautiful," I said, my voice even. Ethan stepped forward. "We missed you, Mom." I studied him. "Did you?" His eyes darted away. "Of course, don't do this." Vanessa jumped in quickly. "You know how hard it is to plan trips for everyone. We thought, well, it just didn't make sense to drag you across the ocean at your age." At your age, the words landed like a slap. I smiled. "Thank you for thinking of me." Her relief was immediate. She thought she'd won. They left soon after. As their car disappeared down the street, I set the necklace on the counter, stared at it, then dropped it into the trash. For the first time in years, I felt something close to power. That night, the house creaked and groaned with the weight of old secrets. I sat at the kitchen table, the ledger of my finances open again. Every dollar was a memory. Every memory was a lesson I refused to learn. $10,000 for the birthday. $8,000 for the kitchen. $6,000 for unexpected expenses. $2,500 for tuition. $1 for dental work. $12,000 for business investment. $4,000 for medical bills. $8,400 for remodeling. Total, $62,000. I wrote the number down and underlined it twice. Then I wrote something else beneath it. "Ask your wife's family." 4 words, small, sharp, and final. They didn't know it yet, but those words were the end of everything we'd been, and the beginning of something I didn't even know existed yet. The following week was quiet, too quiet. Then, one afternoon, Ethan called again. "Mom, hey, sorry to bother you," he began, that familiar nervous chuckle in his voice. "I hate to ask, but Vanessa's credit card got frozen, and we need $6,000 to cover a few bills till payday." I stared at the phone. The same number, the same tone, the same trap. He kept talking, but I didn't hear him. My eyes drifted to the ledger on the counter, to those 4 words written in black ink. "Mom, you still there?" I swallowed hard, my heartbeat steady now. "I'm here, so can you transfer it today?" For a moment, I almost said yes out of habit. But instead I took a deep breath. My voice came out calm, steady, colder than I expected. Ask your wife's family. There was silence, not the gentle kind, the kind that collapses everything. Excuse me? You heard me, Ethan. Ask your wife's family. Mom, this isn't funny. I'm not joking. He let out a sharp laugh, disbelief mixed with anger. After everything we've done for you. I cut him off. You mean after everything I've paid for? Silence again, then the line went dead. The phone rang again 5 minutes later, then 10, then 15. I didn't answer. The next morning there were 17 missed calls and 4 voicemails. I deleted every one without listening. By noon, Vanessa texted, "Margaret, what's going on? Ethan's worried sick, please call." I turned off the phone. For the first time in years, the quiet in my house didn't scare me. It comforted me. That afternoon, I went to the bank. The air conditioning hit my face like clarity. The teller smiled politely. "How can we help you today, Mrs. Lewis?" "I'd like to close a joint account," I said. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "All right. Both parties here today?" "No," I said, "and that's fine." She hesitated, but my voice didn't waver. "I'm the one who opened it. I'm the one who's closing it." She nodded, typed for a while, printed a form. When she handed me the pen, I signed without shaking. "Anything else?" she asked. "Yes," I said, sliding the pen back. "Please remove his online access to every remaining account." "Of course, ma'am." When she was done, she smiled again. "You're all set." As I stepped outside, the sky broke open with rain. Heavy, sudden, warm. I didn't run. I let it soak through my clothes, my hair, my fear. Every drop felt like a baptism. That night, Dottie stopped by, soaked from the storm. She took one look at me standing in the kitchen barefoot, hair dripping, smiling like a fool, and grinned. "You did it, didn't you?" I nodded. "I did." She raised her glass of bourbon in salute. To the woman who finally said no, we laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh, not yet, but it was real. Later, when the rain stopped, I stepped onto the porch. The air smelled of wet earth and freedom. I looked up at the magnolia tree swaying in the wind. A single leaf fell, landing on the step beside me, golden and damp, like a quiet reminder. Everything that falls isn't broken. Sometimes it's just letting go. Inside, my phone buzzed again. Ethan's name. I ignored it. Then, a text appeared. "Mom, what did you do?" I didn't reply. Instead, I wrote in my notebook, "Today I chose myself." When Ethan climbed the porch steps, I could hear the weight of his footsteps before I saw his face. Heavy, determined, angry. The kind of anger that comes from losing control over someone you thought you owned. He didn't even knock, just stood there, dripping from the drizzle, his hand still gripping the railing like it was the only thing keeping him from exploding. "Mom," he said, voice sharp, "we need to talk." I didn't move from the doorway. "Then talk." He blinked, caught off guard by my calmness. For a man so used to my apologies, silence was a foreign weapon. "What the hell did you do?" I crossed my arms. "You'll have to be more specific." He ran a hand through his wet hair. "You closed the account, you blocked my access, you canceled everything." "That's right." "Why?" The question hung in the air, stupid and cruel, like a thief asking why you changed the locks. "Because," I said slowly, "I got tired of paying for my own humiliation." His jaw tightened. "This is ridiculous. You're overreacting." "Overreacting?" I laughed once, short and bitter. "Ethan, I've paid your mortgage, your kids' tuition, your vacations. I even financed that SUV you pretend is borrowed. I have paid for your life while you excluded me from it." "That's not fair," he said, stepping closer. I didn't flinch. "No, son. What's not fair is you standing in front of me, in the house your father and I built, demanding money from a 73-year-old woman who can't afford to buy groceries without checking her balance first." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The rain kept falling, tapping against the roof like a slow metronome of truth. "Mom," he finally said, softer now, the guilt creeping in, "you know I've had a hard time since Dad passed. And I was there for you," I said, "but this isn't grief anymore, it's greed." His eyes flickered. "You make it sound like I'm some kind of criminal." I'm not saying you are, I said quietly, but you've treated me like your personal ATM, and I'm done. He let out a sharp breath. You're being dramatic. You're lonely, and Dottie's been filling your head with nonsense. I felt something inside me harden. Don't talk about Dottie. She's manipulating you, he snapped. She's jealous. She doesn't have family, so she wants you to hate yours. Dottie's not the reason I closed the account, I said. You are. He stepped closer again, the old Ethan now charming, persuasive, dangerous. Mom, come on, don't do this. We're family. Family forgives. I met his eyes. Family doesn't lie. Family doesn't steal. Family doesn't go on a luxury cruise and tell their mother they can't afford it. His expression froze. Just for a second, but that second was enough. I saw it, the flicker of guilt, the shadow of recognition. He tried to recover. That wasn't. Don't, I interrupted. Don't insult me by pretending it wasn't true. I saw the photos. I saw your smiles, and you didn't even bother to hide them. He looked down. That was Vanessa's idea. No, I said, voice low. That was your choice. For the first time, he didn't have a response ready. The silence stretched between us, thick as the humidity in the air. I watched him, the man I had raised, the boy who used to build sandcastles in the yard, the son who cried when his father died, and I saw none of that innocence left. Just exhaustion, arrogance, and a faint trace of shame. Finally, he muttered, I can't believe you'd do this to your own family. I almost laughed. Ethan, you did this. All I did was stop helping you dig. His face turned red. You'll regret this. I already regret most of it, I said. So what's a little more? He took a step toward me, his shadow stretching across the porch. You're going to end up alone, Mom, old and bitter. And when you need help, when you can't pay your bills, or you fall, or you get sick, no one's going to come. For a moment, that fear, the one that had chained me for years, rose up inside me again. But it didn't win this time. I've been alone for years, I said. You just stopped pretending otherwise. His jaw clenched. You're selfish. And you're entitled. We stood there, mirror images of hurt and pride, two strangers wearing the same last name. Finally, I opened the door wider, not to invite him in, but to make my point clear. Goodbye, Ethan. He stared at me, as if expecting me to cave, to apologize, to beg him to stay. When I didn't, he shook his head. You'll call me when you realize how wrong you are. Don't hold your breath, I said, and shut the door. The sound of that latch clicking felt like thunder in my chest. I pressed my back against the door, breathing hard. My whole body shook, not with fear but with release. Dottie came over an hour later. I must have still looked pale, because she didn't ask. She just poured 2 glasses of wine and said, Well? He came, I said. She raised an eyebrow. And he left. She smiled slowly. Good for you. It doesn't feel good, I admitted. It feels empty. That's because you've been feeding everyone else for years, she said. Now it's time to feed yourself. I looked at her, realizing how much she'd become my anchor through all this. You know, you sound like a therapist. Therapist? Honey, I'm cheaper and I bring wine. We laughed until we cried. That night, I couldn't sleep. The house felt different. Not haunted, not lonely, just mine. I walked through the rooms one by one. The kitchen smelled of old wood and lemon oil. The living room held faint traces of Earl's cologne. I stopped by the old photo on the mantel again. The family that had once looked perfect. I took the frame down, opened the back, and removed the picture. It slipped from my fingers and fluttered to the floor. For a moment, I stared at the faces, the younger me, the boy I'd raised, the woman he'd married. And I realized something painful but freeing. I was no longer part of that picture. And maybe that was okay. I tore the photo in half, then again, and again. When I went to bed, I slept deeply for the first time in years. The following week, there were no calls, no texts, just silence. I half expected the doorbell to ring, but it didn't, and instead of panic, I felt peace. I started making small changes. I canceled the automatic transfers for Ethan's bills. I called the credit card company and removed his authorized name. I even went down to the DMV to register my car in my name only. Each step was a tiny rebellion, a quiet reclaiming. Then one afternoon I drove to the community center where Dottie volunteered. A flyer on the bulletin board caught my eye, Women's Book Club, Healing Through Stories. I signed up before I could talk myself out of it. The first meeting felt awkward. Most of the women were my age, widowed, polite, guarded. But when it was my turn to speak, I told them about the cruise, about the bank account, about the silence that had nearly drowned me. When I finished, the room was quiet. Then one woman with silver hair and kind eyes said, "You just described my daughter." And another nodded, "Mine too." It hit me. I wasn't alone after all. That night, I sat on my porch watching the sunset. My heart didn't ache the way it used to. It felt open. Until my phone buzzed again. A new text from an unknown number. "Grandma, it's Jaden." I stared at it for a long time before replying. "Hi, sweetheart, how are you?" After a moment, the dots appeared, typing, stopping, typing again. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I know what they did was wrong. I didn't know how to tell you before." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Thank you, honey. I want to see you, without them." I hesitated. Part of me feared this was another manipulation. But the other part, the one that still believed love could heal, wanted to believe him. "All right," I wrote. "Come by Sunday afternoon." "I will." When the phone went silent again, I felt something new stir inside me. Hope, small, fragile, but real. Sunday came. The air smelled of gardenias and rain. Jaden arrived right on time, taller than I remembered, his shoulders broader but his eyes still soft. He hugged me, not the polite hug of obligation, but a real one. "Grandma," he said, "I just wanted you to know. I'm proud of you." I blinked. "Proud?" He nodded. "Mom and Dad, they're falling apart. The money's gone. The bills are piling up. But you stood up to them. You did what none of us could." I reached for his hand. "That's not something I'm proud of, Jaden." "But you should be," he said. "You taught me what strength looks like." We sat on the porch for hours, talking about everything and nothing. He told me about his college classes, his dreams, his frustrations with his parents. Before leaving, he said softly, "I think they're scared of you now." "Good," I said, half smiling. "Maybe they'll finally respect me." He hesitated. "They might do something stupid." "Like what?" He shrugged. "Dad's desperate. He blames you for everything." That lingered in my mind long after he left. It was the kind of knock that doesn't wait for permission. Firm, rhythmic, official. The kind of sound that slices through the night and makes your stomach drop before your mind even catches up. I froze in the hallway, heart pounding. The porch light cast a long shadow of a man in uniform through the frosted glass. "Mrs. Lewis?" he called again, voice steady but urgent. "Savannah Police, I need a word." For a moment, I couldn't move. The house felt suddenly too big, every creak and hum amplified. My mind jumped to the only logical place it could, Ethan. Something had happened. I unlocked the door slowly. The man standing there was tall, early 40s maybe, with rain still clinging to his jacket. His badge glinted faintly beneath the porch light. "Detective Harris," he said, flashing his ID. "Sorry to bother you so late, ma'am. May I come in?" I stepped aside, my hands trembling. "Of course. Is everything all right?" He glanced around the living room, as if measuring the air before he spoke. "It's about your son, Ethan Lewis." My throat went dry. Is he hurt?" "No, ma'am, not physically." He hesitated, then pulled a small notebook from his coat pocket. "Your son and his wife were involved in a report filed earlier today." "A report?" "Yes. A complaint of financial misconduct. There are multiple accounts, transfers, and some inconsistencies that tie back to your name." I blinked. The words didn't make sense at first, like they'd been rearranged in the wrong order. "My name?" He nodded. "Your joint bank account with Mr. Lewis. We've been reviewing several recent withdrawals and loans. Some of those funds were traced to questionable business expenses. It's possible your son listed you as a guarantor." I sank onto the couch. "Guarantor? I never signed anything like that." "That's why I'm here," he said gently. "We need to confirm your involvement or lack of it." I stared at the old family photo still lying face down on the mantel. "He forged it, didn't he?" The detective didn't answer directly. "It happens more often than you'd think." He spent the next 20 minutes asking questions, dates, transfers, passwords. I tried to keep my voice steady, but my hands betrayed me, shaking as I poured him coffee. He listened carefully, his pen moving quietly over the paper. When I mentioned the cruise, his eyes flicked up. That was paid for using one of the accounts? Yes, I believe so. And you weren't aware? I shook my head. I didn't even know they were gone until I saw the photos. He exhaled slowly. Mrs. Lewis, I can't discuss all the details yet, but it seems your son may have taken out personal loans under your name. There's a pending fraud investigation. We're talking tens of thousands of dollars. My stomach turned. Tens of thousands. I'd given him 62 already. Apparently, he'd wanted more. The detective closed his notebook. We'll be in touch once we verify everything. I know this is difficult, but you did the right thing by cutting off access. I nodded numbly. Can you tell me where he is? He hesitated. At home for now, but he's been contacted. Contacted, I repeated, as if the word could mean anything other than cornered. After he left, the silence in the house roared. The ticking clock, the hum of the refrigerator, even the faint whisper of the rain outside felt unbearable. I wanted to scream, but there was no one to hear it. By morning, the news had spread faster than I could imagine. Savannah's rumor mill doesn't sleep. Dottie was on my doorstep before 8 a.m., holding 2 cups of coffee and a look that could cut glass. Tell me it isn't true, she said. I sighed. I wish I could. She sat beside me at the table. What happens now? I don't know, I said quietly. They're investigating. He might have used my name on loan applications. Dottie shook her head. Lord, Margaret, he's gonna drag you down with him if you let him. I can't protect him anymore, I said, voice breaking, but he's still my son. She reached across the table, took my hand. You can love your child and still tell the truth about what he's done. Those two things don't cancel each other out. I wanted to believe that. But the word mother carries a lifetime of guilt you can't wash off with logic. That evening, Jaden called. Grandma, he said, his voice low. Dad's freaking out. He said someone came by asking questions. Mom's furious. She thinks you called the police. I didn't, I said softly. They came on their own. He was quiet for a moment. He's blaming you. I know. He said you ruined him. I swallowed the lump in my throat. No, sweetheart. He ruined himself. Jaden exhaled shakily. I just wanted you to know I believe you. That one sentence, 5 words, felt like oxygen after drowning. Thank you, I whispered. That means more than you know. The next day, Ethan showed up again. No text. No call. Just his car screeching to a stop in my driveway. I watched from the window as he stormed up the path, shoulders tense, fury radiating off him like heat. When I opened the door, he didn't bother with greetings. What the hell did you tell them? I told them the truth. You had no right. I had every right, I said calmly. They asked me questions about my own finances. I answered them. He stepped closer. Do you have any idea what you've done? They're freezing my accounts, Mom. My business, my credit, everything. That's not my doing. He laughed bitterly. Don't pretend you're innocent. You started this. No, I said, voice trembling but firm. You started this when you used my name. He stared at me, breathing hard. You're unbelievable. You're a grown man, I said. Take responsibility. He slammed his fist against the doorframe. You think this makes you strong? You think cutting me off gives you power? You've destroyed your own family? My family destroyed itself, I whispered. For a moment, his anger faltered, replaced by something almost human fear. Then he turned away. As he stormed down the steps, he shouted over his shoulder, Don't expect me to come back when this blows over. I stood there long after he'd gone, the echo of his voice fading into the street. I wasn't planning to, I murmured. The next few weeks blurred together bank statements, phone calls, forms, detectives. Some nights, I woke up in a cold sweat, terrified that he'd drag me into his mess. Other nights, I dreamed of Earl, standing by the porch, smiling like nothing had gone wrong. I kept a record of everything. Dates, conversations, every detail, as if by writing it down I could somehow make sense of it. But the thing that hurt most wasn't the money or the investigation. It was realizing that I had raised a man who could do this and still sleep at night. One afternoon, as I was coming back from the grocery store, I saw a figure sitting on my porch. My heart leapt, thinking it was Ethan again, but it wasn't. It was Jaden. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, hands shoved into his pockets. Grandma, he said, standing up, I didn't know where else to go. Come in, sweetheart. He followed me into the kitchen, sat at the table, and exhaled. Dad's losing it. Mom's talking about leaving him. He keeps blaming you for everything, but he's the one who forged those papers. Grandma, I saw one of them. I froze. You saw them? He nodded. It was in his office. Your signature, except it wasn't yours. I knew it. I tried to tell him to come clean, but he said it's too late. Too late how? Jaden hesitated. He said he borrowed from the wrong people, private lenders, not banks. Cold panic shot through me. What kind of people? The kind that don't send emails, Jaden said quietly. The kind that show up. My breath caught. Jaden, you have to stay away from him. I can't, he said. He's still my dad. I reached for his hand. And I'm still your grandmother. You let me help. He nodded, eyes wet. I just didn't want you to find out like this. After he left, I sat alone in the quiet kitchen. The sun was setting, streaks of orange bleeding across the sky. The truth settled like a weight in my chest. Ethan wasn't just reckless, he was in danger, and danger had a way of spreading. That night, I couldn't sleep again. Every sound made me flinch. A car driving by, a branch brushing against the roof. I checked the locks twice, 3 times. Sometime after midnight, I got up for water. The house was dark except for the faint blue glow from the microwave clock. And then I saw it. A shadow on the porch. It moved slowly, deliberately, like someone testing the boards under their feet. My breath stopped. Another sound, a soft scrape, metal against glass. The window. I grabbed my phone with trembling hands, dialing 911. But before I could press call, the motion light flicked on, flooding the porch with white. The figure froze. A man, tall, hooded, face hidden. He looked straight at the window, straight at me. Then he turned and ran. The police came 15 minutes later. They searched the yard, found footprints in the mud, but nothing else. Probably just a trespasser, one officer said. But Detective Harris didn't look convinced. He showed up the next morning, jaw tight. Mrs. Lewis, he said, we believe that was connected to your son's debts. Some of the people he borrowed from are known enforcers. They may have been looking for him or his collateral. My house? I whispered. Or you, he said quietly. You need to stay somewhere safe for a few days. Dottie insisted I move into her place that night. She made me promise to keep my phone on. I packed one bag and locked every door twice before leaving. As we drove away, the house looked peaceful in the distance, like it had never known what kind of fear now lived inside it. I didn't answer the message that night. I just stared at those 6 words, "We need to talk, before it's too late," and felt my stomach twist. I told myself it had to be Ethan. Who else could it be? But a small, colder part of me whispered another possibility. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was one of the men Jaden had warned me about. By morning, I still hadn't slept. Dottie found me in the kitchen, sitting at her table, phone in hand, eyes hollow. She poured me coffee and didn't say anything until I'd taken a sip. Was it him? She asked finally. I don't know, I said. The number's blocked. Then it's him. Or worse. We sat in silence for a long time, the smell of strong coffee filling the room. Outside, the world looked deceptively calm, sunlight cutting through the oaks, birds landing on the fence. Ordinary life. I'd forgotten what that looked like. Margaret, Dottie said softly, you need to leave town for a while. Run? I shook my head. From my own son? From his mess, she corrected. You can't fix this by waiting around for him to make things right. He's past that. I looked down at my trembling hands. Where would I even go? She smiled faintly. Anywhere he wouldn't think to look. By noon, I'd packed a small suitcase. Just clothes, my notebook, and a few photos, one of Earl, one of the kids back when they still smiled without pretending. As I closed the bag, I noticed the last page of my notebook still blank. For the first time, it didn't feel like an omission, it felt like an opening. Dottie insisted on driving me to the bus station herself. No arguments, she said. If those men come back, I don't want you anywhere near that house. The Savannah bus terminal was a blur of motion, people rushing, luggage wheels clattering, engines humming in the distance. I hadn't been there in years. Travel used to mean adventure. Now it felt like escape. Where you headed? The ticket clerk asked. I hesitated. My whole life had been contained within a few miles my home, the hospital where I'd worked, Ethan's house across town. I could have named every street by memory. But for once, I didn't want to recognize the world around me. Portland, I said finally, one way. The clerk raised an eyebrow. That's a long trip, ma'am. I've been standing still long enough, I said. The bus rolled out of Savannah under a bruised pink sky. The city's edges disappeared behind me, magnolias, brick houses, everything I'd clung to for 70 years. As the miles slipped by, the ache in my chest eased. Every town we passed looked a little freer, a little quieter. Somewhere outside of Baton Rouge, I opened my notebook and began to write. Freedom isn't loud. It's the silence that doesn't scare you anymore. By the third day, I started talking to strangers again. A young woman named Yvette sat beside me for a few hours, curly hair, sun-browned skin, a travel guide sticking out of her tote bag. She was headed to Oregon, too. First time going that far, she asked, smiling. First time going anywhere without a reason, I said. She laughed. That's the best kind of trip. You'd be surprised what you find when you stop running towards something and start walking away from it. I didn't know it then, but that woman Yvette Morales would become more than just a seatmate. She'd become the first new friend I'd made in decades. We talked about everything, her job as a tour guide, my years as a nurse, the small absurdities of aging in a world that worships youth. She had the kind of optimism that feels contagious, the kind that makes you believe there's still light waiting somewhere ahead. When we stopped for coffee in Oklahoma, she turned to me and said, "You should come on one of my tours once we get to Portland. West Coast sunrise, redwoods, ocean breeze. It'll change you." I smiled. Maybe I need changing. By the time we crossed into Nevada, I'd started to breathe differently, slower, steadier. I no longer checked my phone every hour. The blocked number stopped messaging, or maybe I just stopped caring. The desert rolled out like an ocean of silence. I watched it through the glass, the endless tan hills shimmering under the sunday. For the first time in years, I didn't feel trapped by stillness. I felt held by it. When we reached California, Yvette nudged me awake. "You're missing it," she whispered. I blinked and turned toward the window. The Pacific stretched out beneath the cliffside highway, blue and infinite. The sunlight hit the water like glass. "Beautiful, isn't it?" she said. I nodded. I'd forgotten what beautiful feels like. Portland smelled like rain and pine when we arrived. I rented a small room at a bed and breakfast on the city's outskirts, a converted craftsman house run by an old couple named June and Walter. They greeted me with tea and soft curiosity, the kind reserved for someone clearly running from something. For the next few days, I joined Yvette's tour groups not because I cared about sightseeing, but because moving kept me from thinking too much. We hiked through redwood trails that smelled of damp earth and nostalgia. We stood by cliffs where the wind tore at our clothes but somehow felt healing. I learned that silence, when it's earned, can feel like forgiveness. On the fifth morning, I woke early and walked down to the river near the inn. Mist curled off the surface like breath. The water moved slow, patient, unbothered. For years, I'd been everyone else's caretaker, wife, mother, provider, nurse. Now, standing by that quiet river, I realized I didn't owe anyone the version of me that hurt to maintain. But peace, like money, never lasts long when your past still has your address. On the seventh day, while I was helping June arrange flowers in the front garden, a car pulled up outside the inn, sleek, silver, familiar. For a second, my heart stopped. The driver stepped out. It wasn't Ethan. It was Vanessa. She spotted me instantly, even behind the rose bushes. Her expression wasn't anger or guilt, it was panic. "Margaret," she called, rushing toward me. "Thank God I found you." I straightened slowly, dirt still clinging to my gloves. "You shouldn't be here." I didn't know where else to go. I glanced toward the inn. June, sensing the tension, disappeared inside. Vanessa's voice trembled. "Ethan's in trouble, real trouble." My chest tightened. "You mean the loans?" She shook her head. "Worse, those people, the ones he borrowed from, they're looking for him, and when they couldn't find him, they started asking about you." I swallowed hard. "I know, they came to my house." Her face went pale. "Oh my God, did they hurt you?" "No, but they could have." Tears welled in her eyes, and for the first time I couldn't tell if they were real or rehearsed. "He's missing, Margaret. 2 days now. His phone's off. I don't know what to do." I stared at her. Part of me wanted to reach out, to comfort her. Another part, the one still raw from betrayal, wanted to close the door and let her drown in her own mess. But motherhood doesn't switch off, even when it should. "Sit down," I said finally. "Tell me everything." We talked for hours in the small garden. She told me about the arguments, the debt collectors, the calls in the middle of the night. She said Ethan had become paranoid, certain that someone was watching him. He kept saying it wasn't his fault, she whispered, that he just needed one more deal to make it right. "What kind of deal?" She hesitated. "Something overseas." I didn't ask. I didn't want to know. I sighed. "Vanessa, you should go to the police." "I can't," she said. "If I do, they'll take everything. The house, the business. I need him to come back." Her voice cracked then, and for a moment I saw not the polished woman who'd excluded me from vacations, but someone broken, scared, like me. Still, forgiveness didn't come easy. "You and Ethan built this," I said quietly, "and now you both have to live with it." She looked at me, pleading, "Please, if he contacts you anything, promise you'll tell me." I nodded slowly. "If he contacts me." She left soon after. That night, I sat by the window, listening to the rain drum against the glass. My phone lay on the table, silent, dark. I almost hoped it would ring. It didn't. Instead, I found myself looking out at the river again, the reflection of the streetlight trembling across the surface. Life had become a strange mix of peace and dread, like standing on solid ground while knowing there's an earthquake coming. I took my notebook and wrote another line. "Freedom is quiet, but guilt echo lude." The next morning, Yvette knocked on my door, holding 2 tickets. "We're doing a sunrise tour along the coast tomorrow. You're coming." "I don't think." "No excuses," she said. "It's the last one before the season ends. You need it." So I went. We left before dawn, the bus cutting through fog-thick roads. When we reached the cliffs overlooking Cannon Beach, the horizon was a thin line of pink and gold. The ocean stretched endless before us. As the sun rose, light washed over the rocks, over the faces of the small group standing there, over mine. For the first time, I didn't feel like a victim of my own story. I felt like someone writing a new one. When we returned to the inn that afternoon, there was a package waiting on the front step. No return address. Just my name, scrawled in a hurried hand. I carried it inside, sat on the bed, and opened it carefully. Inside was an envelope. And inside the envelope, a single folded piece of paper. It wasn't typed. It was handwritten, the ink smeared slightly, as if written in haste. "Mom, I messed up. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I'm sorry. Please don't believe everything they say. I'll fix this, I promise, but if anything happens to me, look in the box under Dad's workbench. You'll understand. Ethan." The letter shook in my hands. Beneath it, tucked into the envelope, was something else, a bus ticket stub, Savannah to Portland. My breath caught. He'd been here. The letter trembled in my hands long after I finished reading it. Ethan's handwriting, uneven, rushed, smudged with what looked like coffee stains, felt like a voice from another world. He'd been in Portland. Here. The words on the page weren't an apology. They were a confession, wrapped in fear. And that last line, "Look in the box under Dad's workbench," kept echoing through my mind like a riddle that refused to fade. I folded the note carefully and stared out the rain-blurred window. The street was empty now. The shadow I'd seen earlier was gone, swallowed by the mist. But the unease stayed. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound felt amplified: the ticking clock, the wind brushing the glass, the low hum of the heater. Somewhere between fear and exhaustion, I made up my mind. I had to go back to Savannah. Running had bought me peace, but peace without answers was just silence in disguise. By morning, I'd packed my suitcase again. Yvette knocked as I zipped the last bag. "You leaving already?" she asked softly. "I have to," I said. "My son left something behind, something I need to find." She frowned. "Is it safe?" "I don't know," I admitted. "But doing nothing isn't." She pulled me into a hug. "Promise you'll call me when you get there." "I will." Outside, the air smelled like wet cedar and possibility. I boarded a flight instead of the bus this time, faster, more direct, and, I told myself, less time to change my mind. As the plane lifted off, Portland vanished beneath a sheet of cloud, and with it, the fragile calm I'd built. Savannah greeted me with heat, humidity, and memories. The city hadn't changed, but I had. When the taxi pulled up to my house, my breath caught. The magnolia tree still stood by the porch, but something felt off, a stillness too deliberate, like a house holding its breath. The door opened easily. Too easily. Inside, the air smelled faintly of dust and lemon cleaner. Everything looked untouched, except for one thing: a small brown envelope on the kitchen counter. No name, no note. I opened it. Inside was a check. Made out to me. Amount, $5,000. Memo line, first payment. My heart pounded. The handwriting wasn't Ethan's, it was neater, almost practiced. I turned the envelope over, looking for clues, but it was blank. First payment. Payment for what? Guilt? Debt? Silence? I picked up the phone and called Dottie. She arrived 20 minutes later, hair in curlers, wearing her robe and holding her purse like a weapon. Lord have mercy, she said, staring at the check. This from Ethan? I don't think so, I said. It doesn't look like his writing. Then who? I shook my head. No idea. She squinted. Could be those loan sharks, trying to make it right. Or maybe Vanessa, paying off what she think'll buy forgiveness. The word forgiveness hit a nerve. Whoever it is, Dottie said, you need to take that to the police. And tell them what? I said. That someone paid me money I can't explain? They'll think I'm part of it. She crossed her arms. And what if it's hush money? The question hung between us like a ghost. That night, I couldn't stop staring at the check. The amount was too precise, too deliberate. It wasn't random, it was a message. I placed it on the table beside Ethan's letter, two pieces of the same puzzle, one speaking of guilt, the other of payment. Before bed, I wrote in my notebook, when you owe someone your peace, every gift feels like a threat. The next morning, I drove to Ethan's house. The driveway was empty, weeds crawling up the edges of the mailbox. The air smelled like neglect. I knocked, no answer. The front door was locked, but the back wasn't. Inside, the house was dim, curtains drawn. The silence felt heavy, not empty, but abandoned. The kitchen table was cluttered with unopened mail, bills, and a few empty beer bottles. In the corner, a family photo hung crooked on the wall. And then I saw a piece of paper pinned to the refrigerator. A printed notice, final notice, property foreclosure. My chest tightened. I moved through the house slowly, half afraid of what I might find. In the hallway, Ethan's office door was open. Papers were scattered across the desk: loan agreements, bank statements, scribbled notes. I recognized some of them copies of my own signature, clumsy forgeries, all dated within the past year. I sank into his chair, shaking. Every lie, every missing dollar, every emergency, it was all here. And then I noticed something else, a small flash drive sitting beside the keyboard. I picked it up, slipped it into my pocket, and left before I could lose my nerve. Back home, I plugged the drive into my old laptop. Folders appeared instantly: investors, contracts, personal. Inside personal, there were 3 video files. The most recent was dated 2 weeks ago. I clicked it. The screen flickered, then steadied. Ethan appeared tired, unshaven, sitting in his car. Mom, he said, voice rough. If you're seeing this, it means I didn't make it out clean. I messed up worse than you know. The money wasn't just bad business, it was tied to people who don't forgive. I tried to fix it. I thought I could, but I was wrong. He looked down, breathing hard. They're not after the money anymore. They're after silence. If they contact you, don't trust them. Don't answer unknown numbers. And whatever you do, don't cash anything they send. My blood ran cold. He glanced back at the camera. There's proof. Under Dad's old workbench. You'll know it when you see it. Then the video cut off. I sat there in the dim light, the glow of the screen painting shadows across the walls. He'd been terrified. That wasn't the voice of a con man. It was the voice of a man running out of options. And now, the only person left to clean up the wreckage was me. By evening, I was in the garage. Dust swirled in the light from the single bulb overhead. The workbench stood where it always had, tools still hanging in neat rows, Earl's old world, untouched by time. I knelt, hands trembling, and reached underneath. My fingers brushed against something solid, a small metal box, rusted but locked tight. I pried it open with a screwdriver. Inside were stacks of papers, loan receipts, copies of IDs, and several manila envelopes stuffed with cash. But at the very bottom, Under the money was something stranger, a folded document marked Confidential Westport Holdings. I unfolded it carefully. It was a contract, pages of fine print, signatures, and the seal of a corporation I didn't recognize. And there, near the bottom, was my name, forged again, listed as secondary guarantor for a $250,000 line of credit. My breath caught. "Oh, Ethan." The sound of tires crunching outside made me freeze. Headlights swept across the garage door. I killed the light and crouched low. A car door slammed. Footsteps. Slow. Purposeful. Then a man's voice, calm, deep. "Mrs. Lewis, we need to talk." I didn't move. Another voice, younger, sharper. "You can make this easy, ma'am. We just want what's ours." The footsteps stopped right outside the door. I held my breath, heart hammering so loud I was sure they could hear it. Then silence, a car starting, the sound of gravel spraying. They were gone. I didn't move for several minutes. When I finally stood, my knees felt weak. The box was still in my hands. Whatever was inside, it wasn't just evidence, it was leverage, and someone wanted it back. The next morning, I went to the police station. Detective Harris met me in the lobby. The moment he saw the box, his expression shifted. "I was hoping you'd come," he said. I told him everything, the letter, the check, the video, the men at my house. He listened quietly, then said, "Mrs. Lewis, we've been following a case connected to this. Your son got involved with an unregistered investment ring, basically a front for laundering money. If that's what's in the box, it could be crucial." I handed it over, reluctant but relieved. "And Ethan?" He hesitated. "We don't have a body, but we also don't have a trace. That's unusual." Unusual. A word that sounds like hope, but isn't. Before leaving, he said gently, "You did the right thing, Mrs. Lewis. Whatever happens, this isn't on you." But as I walked out into the humid Savannah air, I wasn't sure I believed him. When I got home that night, there was another envelope waiting on my porch. No stamp. No name. Inside was a smaller check, $1,000, and a note written in the same careful handwriting as before. "The next one comes soon. Keep quiet." For a long time, I couldn't move. The air felt heavy, almost liquid, as if the whole house was holding its breath with me. It wasn't the first time fear had visited my doorstep, but this time it had a voice, and it knew my weakness. I reread the message, hoping it would rearrange itself into something less final, but it didn't. "You'll never see him again." They knew exactly what to say to make me hesitate. Because no matter what Ethan had done, no matter the lies, the theft, the betrayal, he was still my son. And mothers don't stop loving. We just learn how to love through pain. The next morning, I didn't call the police. I didn't tell Dottie either. Instead, I drove to the old marina, a place I hadn't visited since Earl died. The docks were quiet at dawn, the air thick with salt and mist. Pelicans perched on posts like tired sentinels. I sat on the edge of the pier, the letter from Ethan folded in my pocket, and watched the water move beneath the surface. It hit me then, peace wasn't something you could buy. It was something you paid for, piece by piece, with truth, loss, and the courage to face both. For years, I'd been paying the wrong price. Back home, I opened my notebook again. Every page told a story of what was taken, what was lost, what was learned. I flipped to the first blank page and wrote one line across the top. "No peace is free." Then I made a decision. I wouldn't run anymore. If they wanted me silent, they were going to learn what a woman with nothing left to lose could sound like. That afternoon, I went to the bank where Ethan had opened his fraudulent accounts. The manager, a thin man with nervous eyes, looked startled when I asked for copies of every document signed under my name. He hesitated. "Mrs. Lewis, I'm not sure." "Then be sure," I interrupted. "Because the police already are." He blinked, then disappeared into the back office. When he returned, he slid a thick folder across the counter. "Everything we have." I thanked him and walked out, clutching the folder like armor. Inside the car, I flipped through the papers. Every signature forged, every date falsified, but there was something new, too. A transfer slip from Westport Holdings to another account under a different name. E.M. Weston. Weston. My heart skipped. Ethan's middle name was Michael, his initials. E.M. Was he using an alias? Or had someone else used his identity to cover their own? Either way, the trail wasn't cold. That night, Dottie noticed my restlessness. "You're planning something," she said, pouring us both tea. "I'm finishing something," I corrected. She studied me. "Margaret, I know that look. You're about to do something stupid and brave at the same time." "Probably," she sighed. "Then at least don't do it alone." The next morning, we drove together to a warehouse address listed on the transfer slip, an industrial stretch near the Savannah River. Half the buildings looked abandoned, half alive in that suspicious, half-legal way businesses sometimes are. We parked across the street. "This is insane," Dottie whispered. "Insane is pretending I still have control when I don't," I said. I stepped out before she could argue. The warehouse door was unlocked. Inside, the air smelled of dust and oil. Papers littered the floor. In the back corner, under a hanging bulb, was an old metal desk. On top of it, another envelope. I froze. Dottie appeared behind me, wide-eyed. "Oh, hell no, don't touch that." But I did. Inside was a single page typed this time. "You were never supposed to see this. But since you have, here's the truth. Your son didn't steal from you. He stole for you. The money was meant to protect you from what he owed. That first payment wasn't a warning, it was a shield. Now stop digging." I read the words twice, 3 times. "Protect me?" I whispered. "From what?" Dottie frowned. "This is twisted. Someone's playing both sides." Or Ethan was deeper than I ever knew. We left quickly, my mind spinning. If Ethan had been trying to protect me, then maybe he hadn't vanished out of cowardice, maybe he'd been hiding for my sake. But from who? When we got home, another envelope waited on my porch. No check this time, just a photograph. Ethan, sitting in a dimly lit room, eyes hollow, hands bound, and on the back of the photo, one word scrawled in red ink. Tomorrow. That night was a blur of fear and fury. I couldn't sit still. Dottie wanted to call the police again, but the note's message echoed in my mind. "Stop talking to them, or you'll never see him again." "I can't risk it," I said. "If he's alive, I have to find him my way." "And what way is that?" she asked. I looked out at the magnolia tree swaying in the wind, the way of a mother who's done being scared. By morning, I had a plan. I took Ethan's flash drive and the Westport documents to Detective Harris anyway, but instead of handing them over, I asked him a question. "If someone wanted to vanish," I said, "really vanish, how far could they go?" He studied me, his jaw tightening. "Depends on who they were running from. Someone with money. Someone who thinks they own everything." He leaned back. "You're in deeper than you're saying, aren't you?" I met his eyes. "I'm just trying to make sure my son isn't dead yet." He hesitated, then scribbled something on a piece of paper. "There's a contact in Oregon, a private investigator who used to work federal cases. If your son's alive, she'll find him." I took the note, heart pounding. "Thank you." That night, I sat on the porch again, the sound of cicadas rising around me. For the first time in years, I felt something like clarity. I wasn't weak anymore. I wasn't naive. And I wasn't going to let anyone decide what I deserved. Not my son, not his enemies, not the ghosts of my mistakes. As the sky darkened, headlights appeared at the end of the road. A car slowed, stopped across from the house. I stood, every muscle tense. The driver's door opened. "Ethan." He looked thinner, older, his clothes rumpled, face bruised, but alive. "Mom," he said softly. I couldn't speak. I just stepped forward and hugged him. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then he whispered, "I didn't mean for you to get dragged into this." "You already did," I said, pulling back. "But you're here now, that's what matters." He shook his head. "No, Mom, you don't understand. I came to say goodbye." My blood ran cold. "Goodbye?" "I made a deal. They'll leave you alone if I disappear. It's the only way." "Ethan, no." He pressed something into my hand, a flash drive. "Everything they want is on this, but if you give it to them, they'll never stop. Promise me you'll destroy it." Tears blurred my vision. "We can go to the police, Ethan. We can." He cut me off. "You can. I can't." Before I could stop him, he kissed my forehead and stepped back toward the car. "Ethan," I called, "don't do this." He looked at me one last time, eyes filled with regret. "Tell Jaden I tried." Then he drove off into the darkness. I stood there for a long time, the flash drive clutched in my hand, the night swallowing the sound of the car. When I finally went inside, I plugged it into my laptop. Files appeared, dozens of them, financial ledgers, client names, offshore accounts. But one file stood out, labeled simply, Insurance. I clicked it. The video opened with Ethan's face again, filmed somewhere dark, his voice trembling. "Mom," he said, "if they find this, it means I failed. But if you're watching, it means you still have a chance. Send this to the authorities. It's proof everything they've done. I recorded the whole thing." He paused, looking down. "They'll come for you if they know you have it, but if you release it, it ends." The video cut off. I stared at the screen, shaking. The weight of it, his life, mine, every choice we'd made pressed down like gravity. The next day, I took the drive and the documents to Detective Harris. He listened silently as I told him everything. When I finished, he said, "This could blow the case wide open. You're doing the right thing." "Will it keep him safe?" I asked. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. 2 weeks later, the news broke. Federal agents had raided several Westport facilities across 3 states. Arrests, seized assets. Headlines screamed about a multi-million-dollar laundering ring exposed by anonymous evidence. I watched the news in silence, clutching my tea. They didn't mention Ethan's name. Or mine. Maybe that was mercy. Maybe that was peace. Days turned into weeks. The calls stopped. The envelopes stopped. Even the nightmares quieted. Then, one morning, I opened my mailbox and found a small package. No return address. Just a single object inside, a key. Taped to it was a note, written in Ethan's messy scrawl. "For the house on Riverbend, by the time you read this, you'll know I'm safe. Start over, Mom, for both of us." I stood on the porch for a long time, the wind rustling the magnolia leaves above me. There were no tears left, only something softer, acceptance. Earl was gone. Ethan was alive but lost to his choices. And me? I was still here. Maybe peace wasn't about forgetting. Maybe it was about forgiving the parts of the story that would never make sense.